바쁘신 중에도 오늘 행사에 참석.
I would like to thank all our guests for joining us despite your busy schedules. We will now begin the 2022 Korea Arab Food Security Forum. This forum is jointly hosted by the Korea Arab Society, KIEP, and also the UAE Embassy in Korea. It is sponsored by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and it is a hybrid event where we will be joined by both online and offline participants. We will begin with the opening and congratulatory remarks. The first session will be about the food security situation in Arab countries. We will be joined by 5 speakers. In second session, we will be joined by Korean businesses. We will have Q&A sessions for each of the 2 sessions.
First, let us invite His Excellency Young-Sam Ma, Secretary General of Korea Arab Society, for his opening remarks. Please welcome him with a big hand. His Excellency Engineer Muhammad Al-Amiri, Assistant Undersecretary for the Food Diversity Sector of Ministry of Climate Change and Environment of the United Arab Emirates, and Dr. Masood Al-Mari, Director of Food Security Department of the Ministry of Municipality of Qatar, who traveled from afar to attend this event. Mr. Aiza Al-Samahi, Charge Affairs of the Embassy of the United Arab Emirates in Korea. Mr. Mishal Saad Al-Khair, First Secretary of the State of Qatar to the Republic of Korea, and to all speakers who took their invaluable time to prepare for their presentations, and distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today, and I would also like to express my deepest gratitude to our co-host organizers, including Ms. Rehab Ali Al-Mansouri, Counselor of the UAE Embassy in Seoul, and Dr. Hung Jong Kim, President of KIEP, and Dr. Moon Soo Kang for their support. Thank you very much. Food security, which accounts for one of the essential elements of human survival of clothing, food, and shelter, is an important issue that is directly linked to national security. I was quite surprised to see that Korea was ranked 32nd in the Global Food Security Index published by The Economist last year, which was lower than expected. Despite the increase in flour consumption due to the westernization of eating habits, the self-sufficiency rate of wheat in Korea as of 2020 is only 0.8%. Considering that there may be a crisis in agriculture due to climate change and global warming in the future, food security is a priority task that cannot be delayed any longer. As the world is intertwined and interconnected, food security is not just a problem for any one single country. In May, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned of a global food crisis due to the war in Ukraine. In fact, food supply and demand instability in countries that are highly dependent on foreign grain imports has led to political instability, and in some regions, we witnessed consumers hoarding essential foods such as cooking oil and flour. This is also why cooperation between countries is ever important to achieve food security. I believe today's forum will serve as a productive venue to understand the world's food security situation and identify the direction on how to cooperate with our longtime economic partners, the Arab countries, to achieve food security in the future. Once again, I would like to extend my gratitude to you all for coming, and I hope you find the forum helpful and useful. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Next, I would like to invite His Excellency Engineer Muhammad Al-Amri, Assistant Undersecretary for the Food Diversity Sector of the Ministry of Climate Change and Environment, UAE, for his remarks. He's joining us online right now. So he's joining us via the Zoom platform.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, dear colleagues, it's a great pleasure to be here with you today. From the United Arab Emirates, I want to express my gratitude to the Korea Arab Society, the Korean Institute for International Economic Policy, and UAE Embassy in the Republic of Korea for hosting this important forum. The event gives us great opportunity to examine potential new area of collaboration between Arab world and the Republic of Korea in terms of food security. The UAE and Korea have fruitful collaboration in this area. I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to the International Cooperation Bureau of Korean Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs for their excellent work on the committee on behalf of UAE Ministry of Climate Change and Environment. Along with this, enhancing bilateral commerce in agriculture and food items by streamlining pertinent import and export procedures. We have built a strong research and knowledge sharing partnership. Our main area of interest is the intelligent agriculture system, protected agriculture, and sustainable farming in arid area. In line with our leadership vision, we are eager to intensify international agricultural cooperation and take advantage of successful global initiatives in order to create sustainable agriculture system and increase food security. By doing joint research with our partners, we can help each of our agriculture sector grow and become more robust to present and upcoming problems and challenges, such as climate change, so that we can fulfill the increasing need for food brought on by our expanding population. In this context, I want to call attention to the excellent work done by the Rural Development Administration of Republic of Korea, which has been dependable research collaborator in the area of smart farming. Dear colleagues, I am eager to hear more about your nation agricultural industries, policies, and strategies for boosting food security from your during today's discussion. Thank you very much, and all the best for today's forum. Thank you very much.
무함마드 차관보님 감사합니다.
Thank you very much for your remarks. Next, I would like to invite the president of KIEP, Hung Jong-kim, for his remarks. Please welcome him with a big hand. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Hung Jong-kim, president of KIEP. It's a great pleasure to meet all of you here today. First, allow me to thank all of you for joining us at the 2022 Korea Arab Food Security Forum, a cooperative approach to food security in uncertain times, hosted jointly by KIEP, the Korea Arab Society, and the Embassy of the United Arab Emirates in Korea. Let me extend my gratitude in particular to Mr. Isa Al-Samahi, Chargé d'Affaires of the Embassy of the UAE in Korea, Mr. Michel Al-Kwari, Chargé d'Affaires of the Embassy of Qatar in Korea, and His Excellency Engineer Muhammad Al-Amiri, Assistant Undersecretary for the Food Diversity Sector of Ministry of Climate Change and Environment, and also His Excellency Yong Sam-ma, Secretary General for Korea Arab Society. And I would like to extend my gratitude to all the other guests joining us at this forum. I haven't been to many Middle Eastern countries, but I have been to Qatar and the UAE. I have not been able to visit Saudi Arabia just yet. There are many strengths that these countries have, but they do have fundamental vulnerabilities. And I was able to see the strengths and vulnerabilities myself when I visited. So we actively joined in this forum, knowing that the Korea Arab Society and also the Embassy of the United Arab Emirates in Korea was joining. The global society is going through a very transitional period. The competition among nations, in particular between Korea, China, the US and China and US and Russia is intensifying. Strategic competition and the COVID-19 pandemic and the war in Ukraine are all elements that are fundamentally changing the global political and economic order. So this is considered a global challenge. And at this time, the supply of energy and grain is being brought to our attention. There is great threat to the supply chain. So these risks are particularly a big risk for Korea and Arab countries that have a high dependency on foreign food imports. As mentioned earlier, Korea's food self-sufficiency rate is quite low. So with the exception of rice, which is a main staple, imports of grains such as wheat and soybean are very high. And I understand that Arab countries also import many key grains, including wheat. So, as such, Korea aims to increase its self-sufficiency rate and production through diverse long-term investment and support. Also, based on our strength in ICT technology, Korea is actively promoting smart farming companies. Many Arab countries have a high grain import dependency from countries like Ukraine and Russia and face difficulty producing crop due to climate and soil limitations. As such, stable supply of food has become an urgent challenge. And as a result, many Arab countries are strengthening policies to stabilize supply, expand stockpiles, and protect and develop water resources. No individual country can overcome the crisis at hand alone. We have seen that international cooperation is desperately needed to overcome this crisis we face. For Korea and Arab countries facing a similar challenge in food security, closer cooperation in many areas, ranging from stabilizing food supply chains, responding to climate change, and developing the agricultural sector will be needed to achieve the common goal of sustainable growth. Ladies and gentlemen, it is against this backdrop that KIEP has organized seminars that touch upon the various economic security issues. The seminar today, the 2022 Korea Arab Food Security Forum, is part of KIEP's sixth economic security seminar series this year. And I have to say that it is all the more meaningful that we are joined by the Korea Arab Society and the UAE Embassy in Korea. Today, experts and businesses will gather both on and offline, and I believe that our discussion on ways to cooperate in terms of food security will be very meaningful and timely. I would like to thank all our guests and participants once again for joining us, and I look forward to active discussions, and I hope that it will serve as an opportunity to expand the cooperation between Korea and Arab countries. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Jong Kim. Lastly, I would like to invite Mr. Aisa Al-Samani, Chargé d'Affaires of the Embassy of the UAE in Korea, for his congratulatory remarks.
Your Excellency, Ma Young-sam, Secretary General of Korea Arab Society, Honorable Dr. Hein Jong Kim, President of KIEP, His Excellency Muhammad Al-Amin, Assistant Secretary for the Food, Director Sector, Ministry of Climate Change and Environment UAE, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is a great honor for me to be with you today at this important forum. I would take this opportunity to extend my thanks and gratitude to Korea Arab Society and to Korea Institute for International Economic Policy for jointly hosting the forum together with our embassy. Food security as a basic human need has gained keen interest globally. The interest in food security has increased recently as a result of the geopolitical developments, which has significantly affected the resilience of supply chain, including food supply in many parts of the globe. Like many other nations in the Arab world, my country, United Arab Emirates, is not fully safe from the problem of the food security in the future. This is due to the challenges that the UAE is facing, especially when it comes to the climate change factor. Owing to its location in the desert, the UAE suffers from severe weather in summer and sees very little rainfall. It has only a limited arable land. For that and for the other reasons, food security has become a key strategic priority in the UAE. In the following session, you will listen in more details to presentations from the UAE on the status of food security. Today's forum is a good platform for the UAE and Republic of Korea to discuss ways and means for reinforcing their bilateral cooperation in the food security. It is my sincere hope that the forum will succeed in achieving its objectives. Thank you and kamsahamnida.
We will now begin session 1. I would like to invite Dr. Moon-Soo Kang, Head of Africa and Middle East Team at KIEP, will give the first presentation. Dr. Kang. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Moon-Soo Kang from KIEP, or the Korea Institute of International Economic Policy. Today, I would like to particularly talk about climate change and food security, the relationship between the two. Due to the Russia-Ukraine war, food security issues have been raised as pivotal in the Arab world. And Arab countries have a high food import dependency, and that's why food security has become a priority challenge. And you can see that up to 27 countries have been engaging in export restrictions on food and fertilizers that led to food prices soar. And that's why you see that food security has become and emerged as a key challenge. And due to the war, it did lead to supply chain disruptions, and export restrictions also had a role to play. But I want to mention that due to climate change, food production will go down, which will lead to food insecurity. And particularly, I would like to mention that there were severe droughts across many countries around the world, US, Argentina, and in Europe. There are forecasts that their crop yield will drop. And you can see that climate change is in the works and impacting food security. GCC countries import about 85% of their food, 93% of cereals, 62% of meat, and 56% of vegetables. So when there are external shocks, GCC countries are, relatively speaking, more vulnerable than other countries. And referring to the 2022-23 season, US, Argentina, EU, and India, the major agriculture exporting countries, are expected to have lower production yields compared to previous years. So you can see that climate change is having a great impact, and Egypt and UAE is to hold COP27 and COP28 respectively. And that's why you can see that in the Middle East, climate change is gaining more attention from the countries in the region. So let me now first give you some background on climate change and how that would impact agricultural produce and what kind of cooperation can be possible between Korea and Arab states. So let's look at Afghanistan and the MENA region, or the MENA region, that also in Afghanistan and Pakistan. So this is the orange line. You can see that temperatures are increasing. The MENAP region, you can see, is seeing an upward trend. And then precipitation, if you look at the volatility, it's on a downward trending. So you can see that this MENAP region is particularly emerging as a low precipitation region, meaning that droughts can pose a serious challenge in the region. Of course, there are other dry lands, but North Africa and Arab states and the Arab region is noted as a severe drought region. And this indicates the water stress factor. In other words, it indicates the withdrawal from the available water source. So if you refer to these graphs, you can see that the MENAP region has a very high number. In other words, you can see that they're actually extracting or withdrawing more than 400% of the available water source. And compared to Central Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa, it's much higher. And if you compare this between 2002 and 2017, you can see that there are higher withdrawal rates in MENAP. That's why the water stress index is increasing in the Arab region. So then, what about the drought index? If you refer to the drought index, what can be noted, of course, there are many indicators, but particularly we can look into the warm spell days. And the MENAP region, compared to the average temperature levels, it is forecasted to witness more warm spells. So if you look at Central Asia and other developing states, it may seem as not much different. However, as you know that the Arab countries already have higher temperature levels on average, the duration of these warm spells is to be extended, which will lead to further droughts and further hot spells. So just looking at the drought index, you can see that in the Middle East, it's to exacerbate going forward. So comparing this with Central Asia and other developing nations, you can see that the drought issue can be even more severe in the Middle East. So you can see that GCC countries have two stress factors. One has to do with acquiring or finding the water source would be one, and second would particularly be pertaining to Bahrain and Qatar. So it's about sea level rise. Bahrain and Qatar are vulnerable to sea level rise, and therefore, in the long run, it's important to make sure to prepare in advance. But you can see that water scarcity and sea level rise can actually lead to a great impact in the industrial complexes in the region. So this could be another challenge. So then, how is climate change impacting other regions? You can see that in North Africa, we've been seeing severe extreme drought levels, which may increase their wheat import levels. And Argentina is a key wheat exporter. But if you look at Buenos Aires and Cordoba, the drought index is exacerbating. So if you look at Argentina right now, their corn and wheat production yields are to drop. And let's now move on to Europe. Once again, in Europe, they've witnessed the worst droughts. I'm sure that you've read in the news. And if we compare 2022 to last year of 2021, soil moisture levels dropped significantly. It's indicated here in red. And the vegetative health index for EU wheat also is worse than last year. Therefore, due to the droughts, EU is to see less production for the year. And moving on to the US. Centered around the Midwestern region, they've been enjoying high crop yield. And you can see that corn, wheat, all of the croplands are here in this region. But if you look at Texas, in 2022, drought index is soaring. So drought is a key challenge. And according to the Department of Agriculture of the US corn production will drop by 5% this year. Of course, soybean production is to increase, but all in all, you can see that corn and wheat, which would be the key cereals for the Middle East, eventually a drop in corn production will lead to price increases. So in the long run, it will impact negatively Middle Eastern countries. And Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, and Missouri, these states are key crop states. But you can see that due to high temperatures, it has actually led to baking the corn during the pollination stage, which will, of course, drop the yield. So considering the situation around the world of high temperature and severe droughts, we all do forecast a drop in agricultural production, and this will be a key risk for GCC and the Middle East countries. So centered around UAE, you can see that food imports are as follows. So in the case of UAE in 2020, their total food import amounted to $24 billion, and a lion's share was processed foods, vegetables and fruits, and meat. However, GCC countries, including the UAE, have been trying to increase their self-sufficiency rates in fruits and vegetables, and smart farming and vertical farming is what they're trying to introduce. So we can see that self-sufficiency rate for fruit and vegetables is going up. Moving on to the G20 Food Security Index, and you can see that we have Saudi Arabia included in the list out of the G20 countries. You can see that there are certain countries that are not performing that well, with one being Saudi Arabia. And you can see here it's all in red. So in terms of food loss and waste, sustainable agriculture, and nutritional challenges, Saudi Arabia is struggling. So this is also another point that we cannot disregard. And if we look at UAE and Qatar, are they better off compared to Saudi Arabia? Unfortunately not. You can see that the GCC countries are showing some similar situations across the board. One of the key challenges of the Arab nations would be their water stress levels. In other words, water scarcity. Bahrain and Kuwait, their sustainable water index has actually been just on 25%. In other words, they are using 4 times more water than what they have. And if you look at the irrigation water that's used or agricultural water withdrawal for agriculture, efficiency rates are very low. Oman and Saudi Arabia and UAE, unfortunately enough, their efficiency ratio is 50% plus. But with droughts and high volatility in precipitation, water stress is to go up. So you can see that for GCC countries, irrigated farming may be a bit difficult to do considering the water scarce situation. So for GCC countries, they're very much focused and are investing in smart farming and vertical farming. Recently, due to the Russian-Ukraine war, food import costs dramatically increased for the top 20 importers, and Korea is of course included here, and we have a number of Arab countries. And in the long run, we believe that as climate change becomes more severe, and if we do see simultaneous droughts throughout the world, Korea, Arab countries, in other words, food importers, will be burdened with high food costs. So we really do need to prepare in advance. In the case of the G20 countries in 2021 in Italy, they hosted a presidency meeting with the agriculture ministers. And there was also a meeting amongst the foreign affairs and international development ministers. And what was discussed at the time, especially amongst the agriculture ministers, was that we really need to find a way to strengthen resilience and sustainability in the agricultural sectors. And this has to do with the emerging economies. But as you know, there is a zero hunger target, and that G20 countries should contribute to agriculture in countries that are lagging behind the zero hunger target was something that was discussed. And then amongst the foreign ministers of G20, they've announced the Terra Declaration and has been emphasizing the importance of international cooperation in this regard. UAE and Korea can collaborate in many fronts, but I do want to cite a successful example, which is the desert to rice production project. the Rural Development Administration, or RDA, of Korea in the desert area of Sharjah collaborated with UAE and desert rice production and successfully cultivated the Asemi rice. And I know that the UAE government is very much interested in this program. And the UAE also launched the Emirate Wheat National Initiative to produce their wheat domestically. However, the challenge at hand for UAE is that consumption is on the rise. And if you look at the amount that they want to produce domestically, consumption is actually overtaking the pace and the volume. So it's about how to cater to the increasing demand or consumption. I believe that this is a key task for UAE. So just briefly, if I may bring this all together. So in other words, due to climate change impacting food production and the issues of GCC countries, against this backdrop, let me go into what we can do going forward. So I think that there are particularly 5 areas where Korea and GCC can cooperate. First is in the area of water management. So in the case of water management, Arab countries are very much interested in this topic, and particularly the desalination and used water treatment project would be some examples. So it's about how to acquire water source, and I think that Korea and GCC can cooperate in this regard. And then land degradation, so to reduce or delay desertification and to stabilize sand movements, to obtain arable land. It would also be another area where Korea and GCC can cooperate. And third is stockpiling. Korea is a part of ASEAN plus 3. You can see that ASEAN and CJK, China, Korea, and Japan have been cooperating in the area of stockpiling. And in Korea, centered in NAFRA, you can see that we've been engaging in rice stockpiling. And I believe that we may need to expand the scope to not only Asia or East Asia, but also with the Arab states to think about how we can expand food reserves. And the fourth has to do with agricultural technology and innovation. So already in Korea, there are many smart farms currently being operated, and UAE and Qatar, there are companies that are already out there engaging in smart farming. And in the relationship between Korea and Arab countries, I think that smart farming, vertical farming, and hydroponics, in other words, technology-based smart farming programs could be some of the areas where the two can cooperate further. And last but not least is on food waste reduction. Korea and Arab countries have been witnessing a lot of food waste these days. And in the short run, this may not seem like a significant issue. But in terms of food consumption, if we do want to raise efficiency, Korea and Arab countries really need to find a way to reduce food waste and also look into enhancing food consumption efficiency. And I think that this is also another area where we can cooperate. So that is all for my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next, we would like to invite Amar Al-Ahmadi, Head of the Agricultural Research and Development Section at the Ministry of Climate Change and Environment of the UAE. We ask for your patience as we connect to the speaker who will be joining us via Zoom. For those of our online participants, if you have any questions, please leave your questions in the chat room. Thank you.
Hello, good morning, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Amal Ahmadi. I'm the head of the Agricultural R&D section in the Ministry of Climate Change and Environment, and I'm also from the General Secretariat of the Emirates Food Security Council. It is a pleasure and a privilege to be able to talk to you this morning or evening, in your case, about the development of the food security strategy in the UAE and about the establishment of the Emirates Food Security Council as well, highlighting key milestones and achievements. So before we start, I would like to start with a quote from His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the President of the United Arab Emirates. The realization of food security is a joint responsibility, starting with the individual and the family and their consumption patterns of resources, ending with the interaction by the community, as well as the public and private sector institutions, and their support for overall plans and strategies to food security. This is basically emphasizing on the cumulative role to ensure food security in all countries. Food security definition for the UAE is aligned, of course, with the global definition, as we define it as enabling the UAE population to have access to healthy, sufficient, safe, and nutritious food for an active and healthy lifestyle at affordable prices at all times, including emergencies and crises. This is an overview of the history of the food legal landscape in the UAE. As you can see, the food mandate in the UAE was led by different entities at the federal and the local Emirates levels. At the federal level, we had the Ministry of Climate Change and Environment, of course, which was mainly looking into food security or food safety. And then we have the Ministry of Economy that was looking into traders. And then we have the Emirates Authority for Standardization that looks into agriculture standards, and of course, in collaboration with the Ministry of Climate Change and Environment. And then we have the Federal Customs Authority that monitors the trade continuity and rate by the HS code, of course. At the local Emirates levels, we have in Abu Dhabi, a dedicated entity was established in 2005, which is the Food Control Authority, and it's now Abu Dhabi Agriculture and Food Safety Authority, to ensure food safety, mainly guaranteeing the quality of food for human consumption and to conduct necessary research and studies on food. Other Emirates were also led by respective municipalities and were mainly monitoring food safety. In 2017, a decision was issued by the UAE cabinet to create a new position for a Minister of State for Food Security. Her Excellency Mariam Meheri was appointed as a Minister of State for Food Security, who is also now the Minister of Climate Change and Environment, after integrating the food security file into the ministry. At that time, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, the Vice President and the Prime Minister of the United Arab Emirates, asked the minister to develop a national strategy consisting of short and long-term plans, focusing on adopting technologies and focusing on R&D as well, and enhancing and increasing the domestic production and investment as well in the agriculture field to support food security in the UAE. So this is basically how the process started, where we have the cabinet establishing the position of the Minister for Food Security, then later the formation of the team to develop the national food security strategy in the UAE, to finalization of the strategy and the approval from the Ministerial Council, and all the way to actually forming the Emirates Food Security Council by a cabinet decree, which the main role of this council is to ensure the proper implementation of the food security strategy. During the development of the strategy, we have studied the main food items in the UAE, what basically is included in the food basket of the UAE. And we determined them on three main criteria: the consumption rate, the production capacity, and the nutritional value. And we came up with 24 main items. This is, of course, taking into consideration the consumption, also taking into consideration that we have over 200 nationalities living in the UAE with different nutritional and preferences and needs. In the strategy, the vision was to have a world-leading hub in innovation-driven in food security. And the mission here was also to champion agribusiness specifically and agribusiness trade facilitation through enabling technology-based production, promoting international trade partnerships as well, and enhancing nutritional intake and reduce food loss and waste, which I do believe we can learn a lot from our Korean colleagues. The strategy that we have developed is based on 5 main directions. The first one, to facilitate global agribusiness trade and diversify international food sources. And this is, of course, mainly, as our colleague have already mentioned, because the UAE really imports more than 90% of our food from abroad. And we need to be ready to face any disturbance in the food value chain and the food system. The second strategic direction is to enhance sustainable technology-based domestic food supply across the value chain. Because, we are facing challenges in the lack of arable lands, but despite this challenge, we have great opportunities, and we want to use technologies and technology-based systems to contribute to face the challenges we have in terms of arable land, scarcity of water, in reducing the challenge of self-sufficiency. The third strategic goals direction is reduce food loss and waste, which is also, of course, aligned. We're aligned with the global goal in halving the food loss and waste by 2030. And then we have the fourth is to sustain food safety and improve nutritional intake simply by reducing consumption of unhealthy food and reducing food safety incident. And the last strategic direction is to enhance the capacity to respond to food security risks and crises, just to be ready of any issues like the issues that we have now, like COVID, like the geopolitical issues that we face globally. So we have a couple of enablers in our strategy that we have in the UAE. One of the enablers is that the food security governance in the UAE is basically governed by the Emirates Food Security Council, which I will elaborate more on the next slide. The R&D agenda. Then we have the food security database because we all know that data is the major challenge when it comes to food security or any other sector. And this is a major challenge for us that we are trying to overcome as well. Building human capacity, where we're trying to invest in human or in building knowledge-based expertise locally, especially for the newer generation. And then we have creating a food movement by engaging the communities, as His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed have also mentioned. So, as I mentioned, the governance and the execution of the food security strategy. The Emirates Food Security Council is the governance body for the implementation, and it plays a major role really in ensuring that the food system continues to be available for everyone, that we have a proper food security status in the UAE. It's the primary reference to anything related to food. And as you can see, there are many members from the federal authority, and we have, of course, members from all the local Emirates levels. So a little bit about what's the role of the council and what is the mandate. Basically, the council reviews all the legislations that are concerned on food before it's approved by on the federal level. It also ensures the implementation, as I've mentioned, of the food security strategy and all relevant legislations between 7 Emirates, and ensure the streamlining those legislation. And then we have the council also proposes new regulations or legislation policies that we see fit to enhance the food security in the UAE. We outline investment agendas for the food system locally and internationally. We also conduct specialized risk studies on the global challenges for food security, such as climate change, droughts. And we also develop diversify supply initiatives. And last but not least, we submit periodical reports, of course, for the leadership on the status of food security. The committee reports, under the council, there are several committees. We have 7 committees here, and these committees basically ensure or report to the council and ensure that they support the implementation of the strategy. These committee members are expert level from all different entities, federal, local, and sometimes even private sector, that study the situation in the different fields, and they come up with recommending policies and initiative on how can we enhance the food security status in the UAE. Now I'll mention some of the key achievements and initiatives that came from after the development and announcement of the food security strategy and through the Emirates Food Security Council. The council developed a plan to diversify imports, especially when it comes to strategic commodities with strategic stakeholders from governments and private sector. The council also adopted a food monitoring mechanism, which is continuously monitoring and ensuring the sustainability and the continuity of food supply. The council have also developed a media plan that included awareness messages against excessive purchases of food and highlighting the importance of adopting food safety precautions in line with international best practices. We've also developed a mechanism to support local agriculture and livestock producers by connecting them to the local market and providing government supply contracts through different entities. We have also formed a team to assess and follow up on all the development and find solutions to all the challenges. Other key achievements that I would like to mention here, one being the food technology challenge. This is an international competition that we'd love to invite our Korean colleagues to participate in the future. There have already been 2 versions that have been launched. It aims to find technology-based solution to enhance food security, and it also invites people from all backgrounds to participate, especially university students and startups. So we're really focusing on youth and entrepreneurs. And then we have the Food Tech Valley. The Food Technology Valley is being developed in Dubai, just close to our ministry here. And the aim here is to attract companies from outside the country and from the region to come to the UAE. The Food Tech Valley project consists of 4 main areas: the Agriculture, Engineering and Technology District, the Food Innovation Incubators, the R&D Center, and the Advanced Logistics System District, which I also believe is a great opportunity for our cooperation with our Korean colleague, whether it's in food innovation incubators or, of course, R&D. And then we have the NEMA initiative, which is something I am very close to my heart that I've worked on. Personally, it is a national initiative to reduce food loss and waste. And it aims basically to achieve the UAE's global commitment to reduce food loss and waste by 50% by 2030. The last initiative that I also want to highlight is AIM for Climate initiative between the UAE and the United States, where it aims to support investment in smart agriculture and providing solutions to global hunger and to climate crisis. During the meeting of the Initiatives Council, the value of the targeted investment actually was doubled from $4 to $8 billion globally. And as you know, the UAE will host COP28 in 2023. And as it's been done in COP26, the emphasis on the interrelation between climate change action or climate action efforts and the food sector will be emphasized, and the importance of the integration of those two key topics will also be emphasized. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed and learned from this session. And I would like to thank really the Korea Arab Society and our embassy in Seoul for giving me the opportunity to attend this session as a speaker. Thank you very much for listening again, and I'm looking forward to furthering our cooperation in the areas of food security. Thank you.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amal, for the presentation. Please stay on the line until the Q&A session. 다음으로 여현 순천대학교 지능형 스마트
Next, we would like to invite Dr. Hyun-yo, Director of AI-based Smart Agricultural Grand ICT Research Center, for his presentation. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As introduced, I'm Hyun-yo. I'm the Director of AI-based Smart Agriculture Grand ICT Research Center. I will give a brief overview of smart farms in Korea. Here is an overview of the presentation. First, the RDA and Korea's Agricultural Ministry is focusing on these technology. We use ICBM. It does not stand for a military item. ICBM actually refers to technology that pertains to sensors and actuators. So sensors are used to collect information, and they are connected to actuators which can take action based on this information. And then all of this is connected through Internet of Things. And that is what I stands for. And C stands for Cloud Computing System, and B stands for big data, and M stands for mobile. So we are currently focused on ICBM as a driving technology for smart farms. And lately we have added AI technology, and so we refer to the technology as ICBMA. Smart farm began to appear in Korea, especially in the policy sphere, since 2013. And this was because what was mentioned by many of the previous speakers. First of all, the agricultural population in Korea has continued to decline, and this has been due to industrialization and acreage reduction. And this is actually happening not only in Korea, but globally. And so if you look at self-sufficiency rate in Korea, the food self-sufficiency rate is less than 50%, and for grain, it's actually less than 20%. And these figures continue to decline. And if you look at the agricultural population in the 1970s, the agricultural population exceeded 10 million, but as of 2013, that figure has fallen below 3 million. And of the agricultural population, you can see that it continues to age as well. And this all contributes to a risk in stable food supply. So smart farms are a way to overcome the food security challenge. The RDA and other entities define smart farming as what you see on the slide. Smart farming is an ICT-enabled automated agriculture by using data from greenhouse or outside fields or animal farms. The point is that we use data to advance agriculture and farming. So that is the essence of the definition of smart farming. And the outcome of this smart farming is as listed in this slide. It enhances quantity and the quality of the harvest. And if we implement smart farming, we can reduce costs for energy and labor. And also, smart farming allows us to increase the ease of farming. As you know, farming is very difficult. And so smart farming can do or achieve the 3 bullet points information here. So how is smart farm being implemented in Korea? We saw the definition. Let me look at the broad concept of smart farm. This broad concept is being used by the Ministry of Agriculture of Korea and also the RDA. So you have the production, distribution, and consumer pillars, and smart farm apply to each of these pillars. So if you look at production, we usually think about the greenhouse. And if you look at smart greenhouses, these are what are the basic building blocks of smart farms. But lately, we have been expanding this to include smart orchards and smart barns, if you will. So it can actually be applied to greenhouse technologies. It can also be applied to outside fields. And it can also be applied to animals as well. When you apply smart farm, you can enhance production, but you need to be efficient in distributing the enhanced production in order to maintain the price. So distribution is actually a very important element. And also, as you know, consumer demand continues to increase. They want certification and then what they want to be able to track the food. And we can provide these to consumers through smart farms. And if you think about greenhouses, in Korea, we usually think about plastic greenhouses. Recently, we have seen more and more emergence of glass greenhouses. So when we say smart greenhouses, we attach the greenhouse with many devices such as sensors, and these sensors are moved by actuators, and actuators take action depending on the information they get. For instance, if the temperature is too high, they activate the cooling system, and they activate different measures. If you look at the smart livestock barn, example can be here we have an example of a pig farm, but let's say there's a pig farm. If you have many different animals and they are all kept in a livestock barn, sometimes because they are being held and grown in the same farm, if a disease is introduced, then this entire barn can be annihilated, and it can also contaminate other barns as well. And so what the smart farm does is provide an optimal environment, and this can help the farmers. So we have a smart livestock barn that is being introduced, and we also have the smart open field. Many of the fields are actually outside like this. You have vegetable fields and you have orchards, and this is how we categorize smart open fields. So we collect data in the open field. We detect disease, pests, and when this is detected, then appropriate measures are taken. If the fields need more moisture, then the actuators can sprinkle more water, and this is how smart farms can be applied in the smart open field. And in Korea, we are actively trying to standardize these technologies. We are making these efforts internationally, and in Korea, there are 80 organizations that are working to build a standard. So standardization is necessary to address various issues raised by users. As you know, on site, there are many issues, and many of the farmers are not big companies, so sometimes they go bankrupt, and there are hundreds of smart farm related companies as well. So if you look at those registered with the RDA, there are about 500 and 600. So they are all very small size companies. And so the devices or systems they produce do not have that compatibility. And a lot of new devices are introduced as well. And so it's difficult for the engineers to use, and sometimes it's difficult to provide the appropriate after-sales service. And so the answer to all of these problems, we feel, is standardization. So there are a lot of efforts to set up a national standard. And for sensors and actuators, there are two national standards, and there are standards for some of the software. In the initial stages, a lot of the companies were opposed to building standards, but dozens of discussions and open discussions and meetings were held, and we were able to come up with standards that can be agreed by many or the majority of the companies. So there is a lot of objection when building standards. So you need that communication with the smart farm companies. And in Korea, we have what is called the Korea Association of Smart Farm Industries, and there are 178 smart farm companies that are members of KASFI. And the smart farm companies, they come together to promote policy, to promote development. And if you look at the smart farm companies, many of them are in the area of greenhouse, smart farm greenhouse. And in Korea, we have trial smart farms across the nation, the Smart Farm Innovation Valley. One of the reasons why smart farms could not develop further was it was very difficult for these individual farms who are trying out smart farms to collaborate together. So the government set up with a trial zone, if you will, called Smart Farm Innovation Valleys. Smart farms use a lot of technology, so the focus of this project is also to focus on providing long-term training programs for young farmers. And there are 4 smart farm innovation valleys in Korea, in Sangju, in Kimjae, in Miryang, and also in Gohung. And in each of these valleys, there are programs to foster young farmers, and these young farmers can build actual hands-on experience on the farms. They can also utilize the data as well. They have to go through a 20-month training period, and the training period includes theory, and it also includes on-the-job training. So after the training is done, they can cultivate crop, and they use the data from this experience to further advancement of smart farms. And at my university, we are connected to this innovation valley. And of the 4 innovation valleys, 2 have opened officially, and the remaining 2 will open towards the end of this year. So this is a bird's eye view of what a typical smart farm innovation valley looks like. If you look at the demonstration complex has a demonstration zone, and this is for private use. This will be used for the young farmers who are trained. So you have the private demonstration zone, and you have the public demonstration zone, and both entities will draw data and they will collaborate. And also startups can also come in here, and they can exchange information and give feedback to each other. So this is what a smart farm innovation valley looks like. So the Smart Farm Innovation Valleys have begun in earnest in last year. So after this year, I think that we will have more data, and we'll be able to contribute greatly to the advancement of smart farms in Korea. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation. Now I would like to invite Dr. Mohamed Gouada, Professor of Middle East Economics at Kook University for Foreign Studies, Graduate School of International and Area Studies.
Thank you so much. I will begin directly to the point. So we're talking here about the consequences of Russian-Ukrainian war on food security in the Arab world. Order 2. So as we all know, the Russian invasion of Ukraine has significantly impacted food and fuel security in countries with the Middle East and North Africa, as they are among the top importers of food products from Russia and Ukraine. For instance, in 2021, the Middle East imported over 36 million tons of wheat, most of it coming from Russia and Ukraine, which were the source of almost 30% of global wheat imports that year. Dependence on Ukraine and Russia for imports of wheat, the world's largest source of calories, is at 50% among the highest globally. The greatest vulnerabilities exists in Egypt, Lebanon, Sudan. Of course, Yemen and Syria is also drastic cases, and we will talk about that later. Imports will actually need to rise from pre-war levels if population growth and dietary changes towards meat and dairy products are taken into consideration. So one thing we need to understand is that even before the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, the food security in Arab world or the MENA countries were having some drastic issues or facing some tremendous challenges because millions of people in the MENA nations suffered from severe starvation and malnutrition. According to a report by the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, in 2019, roughly 55 million Arabs, or 13.2% of the population, were hungry, and the situation is terrible in MENA countries affected by conflict and bloodshed. Of course, we're talking about countries that are losing its stability. We're talking here about Yemen mainly, Syria, of course, Libya in one part. So another statistic is that in 2020, MENA's share of the world's acutely food insecure people was 20%, even though the region is home to only 6% of the world's population. So that means that the MENA countries is some, of course, we can't say all the MENA countries, and actually we will categorize MENA countries into 3 categories later. One category would be the countries that are facing war and conflict, internal conflict, like Yemen, Syria, and all that. Another case where countries are facing economic difficult economic situation. Here we're talking about Egypt, Sudan, and Lebanon. And then we have the GCC countries, which are, I would say, more secure, and we'll talk about that later. So if we look at the vulnerability map here, we see that the extremely high is happening mainly in the Middle East. You can see here we have Egypt is facing a tremendous challenge. Sudan as well. Here we're talking about Yemen. We're talking about Oman, also facing some challenges. But overall, it's clear that MENA country is facing some challenges. But also, it's clear that not all MENA countries can be categorized under one category. And this is something I always persist to say when we're talking about MENA countries, because it's very hard to categorize all MENA countries under one basket. It doesn't work like that, of course. So if you look at food consumption and calories per day and source of calories across countries, here we are comparing between Egypt, Sudan, and Yemen. You can see that wheat and derivatives is mainly coming, here we have domestic origin, is domestic and imports. And you can see that the import factor is very high in Egypt and also in Yemen. When it comes to sugar products also, when it comes to other food products, it's mainly domestic, but also cereals and derivatives and oil, seed, and vegetable is also mainly dependent on imports from outside of those countries. One thing also we need to understand is that when we are talking about food security, we're not actually only talking about food security. We are talking about inflation rate that affects everything else. And for us in economics, when we are looking at inflation, that means we are having economic instability, which leads to political instability, which might lead to more security measures and more security threats. So here, for instance, we look at food prices influences politics everywhere, particularly in the MENA region. The FAO Food Price Index reached a 50-year high in 2011. Of course, all of us remember 2011, year of the Arab Spring, which was not very springful for many countries, unfortunately, reached 50, and then coinciding with the protest and regime changes that characterized the Arab countries. So you can see this was happening mainly here, 2021 here, 2011, and then we are here at the same level, more or less. So we are facing a tremendous challenge when it comes to economic situation in those countries. So I think this is something that should be considered, and we can talk about that later. If we look at food inflation heat map and real food inflation heat map, of course, when we are talking about real food, we are talking here about the actual inflation price. Thank you. If you look at Arab countries, food inflation for each country is based on the latest monthly data from April to July of this year. And then we are talking about real food inflation. That means it's defined as food inflation minus overall inflation. So this is only inflation in food prices only. Here, this is overall inflation in food and other products. So you can see in both cases, looking at Arab countries, we are facing here, especially in the case of Egypt, we are facing some food inflation situation, which might lead to more problems, of course. Again, looking at share of the Russian Federation and Ukraine imported calories in all the world, you can see mainly it's happening in Egypt, Libya, Sudan. Most of the calories that are imported are happening mainly in those countries when it comes to MENA region. What about the imports? Who buys Russian and Ukrainian wheat? So a quarter of the world's wheat exports came from Russia and Ukraine 2019. As you can see, Egypt is a tremendous importer of Russian and Ukrainian wheat. The overall is about more than $3 billion. Turkey comes next. Then we have Bangladesh. But you can see, if you look at all this list of countries, many of them are coming from MENA countries, as you can see here. So Egypt, and then we have Yemen, and then we have Sudan, UAE, and then we have Tunisia, Morocco. So UAE or MENA countries are so much dependent on Russia and Ukraine when it comes to wheat and when it comes to other products. So looking here at the Arab countries' wheat imports from Russia and Ukraine, also this is another statistic. Egypt, mainly 85% of its imports from wheat is coming from Russia and Ukraine. Lebanon, 75.5%, Libya, 59%, Sudan, 57%, Syria, and Yemen. So all this tells us that countries are facing some problems, especially in the case, of course, of Egypt and Lebanon. What about each country's case? And I will do this fast. So consuming 18.5 million tons of wheat annually, Egypt is by far the world's largest importer of wheat, with imports amounting to 13 million tons of wheat annually. Bread and other wheat products account for up to 40% of calories intake per person. Imports account for over 60% of wheat used across the country. Even the word alive in Arabic for us in Egypt, it means aish, it means bread. So when you're saying he's eating bread, that means he's alive. So you can imagine this is it's like rice here in Korea. For Egyptians, bread is the main source of calorie intake. The wheat production is self-sufficiency covers only 40% of the total demand. Thus, Egypt is the wheat's largest importer globally, with 80% of all imports coming from Russia and Ukraine. The government has announced, of course, many measures to secure a safe rate of local wheat, and for the moment, they seem to be efficient in the current local wheat harvest season so far. Moreover, the country has started negotiations with IMF. At the end of the March, UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar decided to invest about $22 billion in Egypt. And this is something that even the Egyptian president is talking about, that with the help of GCC countries, Egypt is able to sustain its regime and its economic stability so far. When we look at Tunisia, very fast, so the rise in wheat prices has just reached the highest point in 14 years. Risks severely affecting Tunisia in economic and political terms. The country's imports around 80% of wheat from Ukraine, and the Tunisian food system has already started to show signs of distress. Before the outbreak, even of the war, Tunisia recorded shortages of wheat products due to the government failure of buying shipments. In addition, the country is experiencing pressure due to the oil prices surge in the global market. Even Tunisia started to think about negotiating with IMF, but of course, the political situation over there is making this difficult to reach some sort of consensus with international financial system. Lebanon, of course, I don't have to talk a lot about Lebanon. I think all of us know, if you're following the news from the Middle East, you can see that Lebanon is facing some tremendous challenges when it comes to its economic situation, both in the financial and in the basic food supply structure. So I think we can definitely go ahead and skip this one. And also Turkey, we don't have to talk about that because already we have talked about countries dependent on wheat and all that. So in conclusion, we're talking about GCC countries. Actually, Saudi Arabia is the world's largest importer of barley, which it uses as animal feedstock. Most of its supplies come from Ukraine and Russia. So its livestock industry would be affected. While Gulf countries could afford rising food prices, of course, as many of the previous speakers have mentioned, they are trying their best when it comes to making their domestic supply of food and all that. So Saudi Agriculture and Livestock Investment Company teamed up with the international grain trader Bunge to buy a majority stake in the privatized Canadian wheat bread And UAE, as we have learned earlier, has implemented a comprehensive food security strategy. Then the conclusion is that world markets are rapidly adjusting to supply chain limitations. Situation leaves the MENA region countries at risk. This comes at the same time as aid organizations are experiencing budget cuts and a lack of funding. Even if the war in Ukraine ceases relatively soon, the fallout from the conflict will haunt food prices and pose new challenges, not only for global food supply chains, but also for international diplomacy and security. And this is why we should always think about the security aspect of the food security. Many countries are likely to begin to challenge the Western imposed sanctions against Russia in order to secure some relief. And China, I think, will have to play some sort of a role, or it's been invited to play some sort of role when it comes to food security in the MENA region. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
교수님 감사합니다.
Thank you very much, Professor. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Masoud Jarrella Al-Mari, Director of the Food Security Department of the Ministry of Municipality of Qatar.
Good afternoon, Your Excellency. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, participants from Arab countries. First of all, I would like to thank the organizer, Korea Arab Society, Korean Institute for International Economic Policy, Embassy of the United Arab Emirates in Seoul, and last and not least, the Korean Ministry for Foreign Affairs. We are going to talk about the Qatar food security strategy, that strategy for the period between 2018 to 2023. Actually, our strategy was designed based on the definition, the international definition of food security. That's mean the availability, affordability, and quality and safety. Also, recently, there is one dimension has been added, which is the natural resources and resilience. Our targeted food basket for this strategy contain the vegetables, fruits, red meat, chicken, eggs, fresh milk, fish, sugar, edible oil, rice, beans, and also powder milk and wheat. In order to meet the food security based on the international definition, our national food security strategy depends on 4 pillars. The first pillar is the international trade and logistic. That means we need to diversify our trade routes in order to avoid any shocks or any interruption for the, the supply. The second is the domestic production or local production. That means Qatar, with the limited natural resources and also limited land, we need to focus on some commodity that need to be produced. So we are focusing on the perishable food that need to be produced locally. We consider it as strategic. The third pillar is the strategic reserve for the commodity which is difficult to be produced locally, like grains, edible oil, and agriculture inputs. The fourth dimension pillar is the domestic market. In order to achieve the affordability and also the quality, we need to enhance our local supply in order to provide a good quality and with good price products. Based on that, under the strategy, we have 13 initiatives. Under the international trade and logistic, we need to do the trade partner diversification and also having a contingency plan with private sector. how they can switch to any, next or alternative supply if there is any problem with the main supplier. For the domestic self-sufficiency, we need to expand our local production, especially the vegetable, and also local red meat and fish production. For the fresh milk and fresh poultry, actually our strategy to maintain our production, since we already have 100% self-sufficiency of those commodities. And also we need to stop any depletion for our groundwater. We try to switch to use recycled or treated sewage water. For the strategic reserve, we need to have stock with the private sector. That's means for 2 to 4 weeks. And also we have a strategic reserve with public sector that can be for 6 months. And also we need to increase our portable water and also reduction in net depletion of our aquifer. For the domestic market, we need to have a support program for our local farming, especially for vegetable, and also integrated food waste program, and also governance mechanism for food safety and standard. As I said, for this pillar, the international trade and logistics, we have a KPIs. We need by the end of next year to have for each commodity from 3 to 5 suppliers or trade partner. The two top, we shouldn't exceed 50 to 70%. Okay, and also we need to have 100% contingency plan for each importer. For the domestic self-sufficiency, we need for the vegetable to reach 70%, for the red meat 30%, for the fresh milk, fresh fish 95%, for our fresh milk and poultry, we need to maintain the 100%. And also for our local food production, we need 100% using recycled water. The situation now we have for the vegetable 46%, we need to reach 70%. For table eggs 52, we need to reach 70, red meat 21, fresh fish 74, fresh dairy and poultry already 100%. Self-sufficiency frozen is not targeted. We need to just have the fresh production. This is a picture of how our local production produce. We have a high quality production locally. And also here we are using recycled water. We have aquaculture, also farming. For the strategic reserves, we need to have, as I said, perishable fruit, vegetable, dairy, and meat from 2 to 4 weeks with the private sector for full population. For the short-term reserve for perishable like onion, apples, carrot, dates, potato, frozen red meat, frozen poultry, we need 2 months for full population. For the strategic long-term reserve for non-perishable wheat, edible beans, sugar, rice, powder milk, it's 6 months for 75% of our population. For the long-term reserve for agriculture input like pesticides, fertilizer, seed, fodder, and animal vaccine, we need to have 6 month strategic reserve for our full domestic production capacity. This is the picture for our food security storage facility at Hamad Port. And also we have this system to monitor the buffer stock at the retailers. For the domestic market, we need by the end of 2023, eligible farmer covered by program to reach 90%. We need 20% of food waste processed. For the certified product, we need to have 100% of our product to be certified. Food safety incident per capita, we need to be 0. And this is our central food market. It's already very advanced, and the infrastructure is very well equipped. And here for the fish market, And also we have a farms market or farm yards where the farmers can reach, instead of going to the central market, they can have a yard, directly sell it to the consumer. And we can see on the map that it's distributed in order to, have affordability for all farmers and consumers. For the governance, actually under the National Food Security Committee, we have 5 working groups. One, the first one for international trade was chaired by Ministry of Commerce and Industry with related stakeholders to follow up the implementation of our strategy. We have also a strategic reserve chaired also by Ministry of Commerce and Industry. The domestic self-efficiency and domestic market chaired by Ministry of Municipality with all stakeholders. And for R&D, we have Qatar National Development and Innovation, okay, with all stakeholders. Now I leave you with a short video about our food security strategy. Thank you. Actually, just because of this really very effective strategy, Qatar achieved first rank among Arab countries in food, global food security index. And for our next strategy, we hope that we can also, globally, we are 24, achieving to be among the 15 top countries. Thank you.
지금부터 Q&A 세션이 있을 예정입니다.
We will now begin the Q&A session.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I have a question for the speaker from Qatar, Dr. Masood Al-Mari. As far as I understand that your goal is to enhance vegetable production to 70%. And I understand that there are some government initiatives or government projects to that end. Can you introduce some of the government projects related to enhancing vegetable production by 70% in Qatar?
Yes, actually now we left with 1 year to finish our strategy. So now we meet 46%. So still we have a challenge to produce during the summer. During, with the mid-tech technology greenhouses, we already, during the winter, we produced more than 100 of our self-sufficiency, but during the summer, still we are facing some challenges. In this case, actually, the government had an intervention with the Free Zone Authority to introduce high-tech technology in order to produce during the summer. So now we are evaluating some projects, especially the indoor farming, where we can maintain all required condition to produce during this period. Also, the government tried to increase the subsidies and incentives, like the electricity subsidies, and also providing some financial support. Because, as you know, for the WTO, as a Qatar member of that organization, our market is open. And, the production under the high-tech is very expensive. In order for our products to compete important, so the subsidies and the intervention from the government should be, applied from the food security point of view.
질문 있으신 분들은 손을 들어주시면.
Once again, if you do have any questions, please raise your hand.
Thank you so much for the question. So first of all, I would like to thank Miss Emil for her a very interesting and special lecture. I really enjoyed it myself. And my question is, I have listened from you that you actually have 4 initiatives, and I was really interested to know more about if you actually are investing in such as startups related to agriculture that comes from abroad, and what kind of startups have had already an outcome through your investment? And is there any initiative you're taking in order to collaborate startups in agriculture between South Korea and UAE in the future? And thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your question. When it comes to startups, entrepreneur, and agriculture practices in general, especially technology-based agriculture, we are actually, as a country, we are emphasizing on this. We are encouraging foreign investment to come to the UAE. For example, there's an initiative in Abu Dhabi under the Ghadan initiative, specifically targeting smart agriculture, high-tech agriculture to come to Abu Dhabi, to be established there. And of course, there is a specific incentive scheme when it comes to the land, when it comes to financing as well. Other than that, I have also mentioned, if you recall, the Food Tech Valley, and part of the Food Tech Valley is actually targeting entrepreneurs and youth to come to the to Food Tech Valley, bring their innovations, and come and be established in the UAE. Other than that, when it comes to financing, for example, we have recently signed an MOU with the Emirates Development Bank, specifically on financing smart agriculture. So we are creating different initiatives to support the sector to increase domestic production and encourage technologies and high-tech companies from abroad to come to the UAE. And of course, we do welcome our Korean colleagues specifically to come to the UAE, for the entrepreneurs to come to the UAE and bring their innovation, because we do trust the innovations and the projects that are the outcomes of the R&D projects from Korea. I hope I answered your question well.
Thank you for your presentation. It was very interesting. And I'd like to ask questions to Professor Mohammed Gouda. It was very interesting to me that you mentioned the social political instabilities happened in 2010, and then the increasing food prices. And I'm just wondering if you can elaborate a bit further to what extent you think food prices are linked to social and political stability. Because if I remember, in 2010, around like January or April, the World Bank or IMF, they evaluated Egyptian or Tunisian economic performance in a quite positive terms, like saying that Egypt is doing well, they're managing and handling external shocks relatively successfully. But then in 2010 and 2011, we witnessed massive protest and so on. So if you can elaborate that, to what extent that's linked to instabilities.
Thank you so much for the question. Thank you so much for the question. Actually, talking about economic research and the link between food security and food prices with economic instability and political instability, we have such a tremendous amount of evidence that relates to this. Actually, when we are talking about, for instance, about droughts and floods and its impact on insecurity, it's evident. We have papers actually talking about Arab Spring and talking about demonstrations and protests and all that, and how this is linked with food insecurity, especially with food prices. And I remember a very seminal paper by Daron Acemoglu of MIT, and he wrote about this paper, and the paper is talking about food prices and how it relates to the instant emotion coming from people that food prices is too much for us, and we need to demonstrate, we need to do something about that. As if, and this is something, unfortunately, in the culture of many, when we talk about the culture also effect, it plays a role. The culture of many in the Middle East, especially coming from socialist origins, that the government should interfere with the prices. For instance, to give you an idea here, we have a question from World Value Survey talking about if the government should interfere with the prices of food and all that. And let me tell you that in Arab countries with socialist origin, like for instance, Egypt and all that, almost 94% of Egyptians said the government should interfere with the price. So the idea of capitalism and all that, it's of course evident that we need to have a capitalist regime and all that, but still the culture of people is talking about tariff, talking about price interference, talking that government is not doing its job if it doesn't interfere with the prices. So this creates many problems for the policymakers. I think in many Arab countries, not only in Egypt, but for many Arab countries, that people think that the governor or the ruler or the king or the president should interfere directly and fix the prices, which doesn't work, unfortunately. So my totally objective way of looking at this issue is that I think in the coming few months, we might see some problems in the Middle East, especially when we're talking about Lebanon, Egypt, and Syria, and Yemen, all that. We might see some issues especially about the economic situation, how this affect the insecurity and stability of those countries. Thank you so much.
네, 발표 잘 들었습니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you for your presentation. I have a question for Ms. Amal Ahmadi. There are many companies in Korea, small-sized companies in Korea that have technology. Would there be opportunities for them to take part in projects in the Arab Emirates?
Yes, of course. As I've mentioned, in the UAE, we do encourage agriculture company to come and be established here in the country. I've mentioned a couple of initiatives that we have in Abu Dhabi, the Ghadan initiative, and then here the Food Tech Valley. I could share the information on these initiatives for you to look into later on. But yes, definitely, even other free zones in Abu Dhabi, for example, are developing initiatives as well for agriculture business. So definitely there is a movement toward attracting high-tech agricultural businesses to the UAE.
다른 질문 있으실까요?
Are there any more questions? Yes, we do apologize for too many questions for Ms. Al-Mahayyi, but well, in 2019, the Qatar and the head of Qatar state has visited Korea. That there was a cooperation agreement forged between the two countries with regard to smart farm. But ever since, Dr. Al-Mardi, I would like to understand, are there any particular projects on smart farm between the two countries that were conducted ever since?
Actually, yes. There was two memorandum of understanding has been signed, one for the smart agriculture and one for the fishery and aquaculture. Actually, we already, under that memorandum of understanding, developed or created a working group, agriculture working group that should facilitate the cooperation. There is a Korean company, they already visited Qatar for the indoor farming. And I think they are also among the other companies who is in the process now for evaluating indoor farming in our free zone area. And also I would like to take this opportunity to invite Korean company to participate in our Agri-Tech exhibition, which is going to be in March next year. So this will give opportunity for Korean company to explore more opportunities there. And we need to work also to utilizing the MOU for more cooperation. And this is the reason for actually my participating in person here for this forum. Thank you.
네, 질문과 대답 감사드립니다.
Thank you all for the questions as well as the responses. In lieu of time, we will not be able to receive any more questions. So we will now rearrange the stage for session 2, and we would like to close the Q&A session. Thank you.
네, 저희 시간 관계상
So,
지금
ladies and gentlemen, we will begin session 2 due to the time constraint. I would like to ask participants to kindly take their seats.
Nice to meet you, everybody. Today, I'd like to speak in Korean. 저는 한국 스마트팜.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I I'm currently a professor at Seoul University and I'm director of Global Smart Farm Business Unit. I am Kim Young-hwa. I was a part of the Smart Farm Committee until recently, but now I have switched my position to the academia. And today in my presentation, I would like to talk about K-Plant, which is the smart farm system that was developed in Korea. And as you can see here, the title of my presentation is Smart Farm and Smart City, Smart Farm Project Development Strategy in Arab. So who will be progressing the slide for me? Last year, I visited Kuwait. It was back in December. And I went to Kuwait to introduce Smart Farm of Korea. And I was able to discuss quite extensively with our Arab colleagues. So this is the table of contents. I would like to go into the high-tech agriculture and smart farm of Korea, smart farm K-plant system, smart farm project development, and K-plant commercialization strategy. So first of all, basically this is some background information, so I don't think I have to go into specifics. Climate change, population growth are some of the factors that have made a smart farm key system to actually have in place a sustainable food system. And climate change has led to the movement of crop cultivation sites. You can see that in the case of the apple species, very famous in Daegu, has moved upward to Kaesong. And Korea's smart farm technology, based on the fourth industrial revolution, has been seeing much progress throughout the years. And as you all know, the smart farm market around the world has been witnessing exponential growth. You can see here the market stage 11.8% growth, and in Korea, more than 6.7% growth. And the smart farm system, it's something that goes beyond the greenhouse. It involves livestock, fish farms, and mushrooms. So you can see that the smart farm is being applied throughout and across multiple fields. And if you do introduce the smart farm system, you will be able to increase productivity, efficiency, and also reduce labor costs, which leads to better profitability, increased profit. And that's why many are interested in the smart farm. So let me now move on to the K-plant system. So this is a convenient way to describe the K-plant program. So here you can see on the left is the typical greenhouse system, but in the middle, this is the ICT system. And what I would like to ask you to focus on is on this ICT system where you see the water source. And especially in the Middle East, I know that the water is important because it's a water stress station. You see water, you need desalination. So purification technology is necessary in the Middle East, which isn't as often used in Korea. And you need to make sure to have a water cycle system in place because you have to save water. And this is indicated here in the middle. And if you look at this system here, where you need a complex system, an environment control system that is introduced from Korea. And in terms of energy, of course, we have geothermal and so forth, but there's also hydrogen or fuel cell related technology that's also utilized here. And you see imaging and other highly efficient systems that are used altogether. And if you look at the greenhouse type, we have a total of 3 greenhouse types. We have the glass greenhouse, the plastic greenhouse, and the vinyl greenhouse. If you think about the efficiency and the size of the economy of particular nation, and depending on the crops to be cultivated, you will have to select the right type, selective. And this is a chart that compares different types of farming. We first have the monitoring and control type of farming system. The second type would be on looking into productivity and efficiency. So in other words, it's an ICT-based climate control system, cloud-based controllable system, which we call the K2 system. We also have the K3 system, which is an advanced system. It has imaging, it utilizes robotics to reduce the manpower, and automated or automation farming is also included here. So you can see that the types of farming can be divided into three. And you can see that we are seeing many instances of hydroponics. So in the deserts, if it's just sand, you can see that the smart farm can enable cultivation by using hydroponics. So it can help increase your productivity in the Middle East as well. And this slide, you can see, indicates the evolution of the system. The hanging butter system is something that's been introduced in the Netherlands, an evolved type of cultivation technology. And once again, you can pick and choose depending on the circumstance. And this is aquaponics. I'm sure that you're very well aware of this type of farming methodology. In Korea, it's not as actively utilized because it's been just introduced in the country, and it's been proven quite successful. So here, we have been cultivating vegetables by utilizing these fish species. This is an eco-friendly way to cultivate using carp and leather carp. So you can actually price it at quite competitively because you can reduce costs. And here, this is a mushroom farm where you can grow and cultivate mushroom around the clock. There are all types of mushrooms here that you can see. There are different types of species. So here, these mushrooms have functional features to it. And it can be utilized as herbs, for cosmetics, for medicine. So you can see that these mushrooms can actually be commercialized into different types of products. And here, this part of the presentation is on smart farm projects. So what we would do is look into the climate, and I've actually divided up the country or the countries into 5 continents, of course, because we're talking about the bigger world here. And you can see that there are different types of smart farm models that can pertain and be useful for depending on the continent or the country. And there are all sorts of core technologies that will be used. And we also have a standardized model of the smart farm that you can refer to. And you see here the ICT model. I mentioned about the K1 and K2 type. So here you see we have entry type, the K1 type, and intelligent, the K2 type. So once again, you can see that by utilizing all of these different core technologies, a package model is possible. But I did want to mention or show you a rough grouping of the package that would be available. We have the Northeast Asian, the Southeast Asian, the Chinese Russian, and the Middle Eastern model. So what we would do is pick and choose the relevant technologies for that region. And here, this is the irrigation system and the smart farm system. And it's important to link them up in desirable fashion. So you need a water source system. You have to hook this up with the water resource system, with the irrigation system to make it successful. And this is a combination of multiple systems, not just a linear system. That in itself would be a risky concept. So it's important to make sure that you have the right engineering in place to connect and intertwine all of these different systems. And when you make the combination, you can see here, I would be using this the level block type of engineering where you would be bringing them together in combination. So this is how it will work. And what I wanted to suggest for the Middle East is the following. because in the Middle East, you have high temperatures, so you do need the right response strategy for that. And here you can see that we have this the system here on how to circulate the water use, and the HVAC system that would also should be added to this. So by using the right engineering, we can create different types of models for the Middle East country. And this is a greenhouse system using Postmax. So you can see fabrication is possible and it can be assembled. Because of the dust storms, you need a polycarbonate film so that it's tamper-free. And there are all sorts of policies and programs, and the models can be divided up into these following 4 types. So we have the Innovation Valley type, and we also have the remodeling type, the cluster type, and the convergence type that ties this up with PV. So we have the service system, the sales system, the education training system. And right now, this is a part of the Smart Farm Innovation Valley in 4 locations. As you can see, we have demonstration farms, we rent out farms, we create youth venture startups at these innovation valleys. And this is a case of the private sector. It was a very successful case of cultivating the stevia tomato at 20 hectares, and it's sold at an expensive price. This is a system in the Netherlands, and it's been proven to be highly profitable. It's the Blue Energy Farm, a technology that was introduced into Korea from the Netherlands. Annual production is around 3,000 tons, and it's highly profitable. And this is a greenhouse model that was introduced in China. So cherry tomatoes, paprika, and strawberries are being cultivated here at this smart farm, and the produce is being exported to CIS countries. And if we do create a smart farm, it should be a smart farm or smart city or a city town that should be created that connects all of these elements together. So this is a new city model that can be introduced in the Middle East. And this is an example of the convergence model that has been already introduced in Europe. And I think that we can also add a theme park element to this, and to have it developed in the Middle East. So it's not just your typical smart farm, but I think that we can create a theme park that can be called a utopia with all of these conveniences. And then the coffee bakery shop is on the rise in Korea, and this is just one example of that. We have a bakery cafe and a botanical garden here, a conservatory. We have container farms, plant factories where automatic cultivation is possible. In the future, this is something that will be introduced in the homes, where you see these cultivation machines that can grow vegetables and plants. Engineering technology enables all this. You need to design it right, and you need to engage in feasibility study to complete the project. And there's also an SBT funding that would be involved. So this is the phases that would be involved, and I hope that we can have further discussions on this. And of course, we do need to minimize risks. There are many ways to do that. So in selecting the components, the elements, the raw materials, there are many ways that you can reduce risk. And if you do not reduce the risk, we may not be able to achieve the stability or the profitability that's necessary and then go bankrupt. There are many ways to develop this project, and I think that we need to have some further discussions with the Middle East. And I do know that they do have big sovereign funds. So what I would like to mention here is that the Middle East and Korea maybe can come together to form a foundation, and through that foundation, we may be able to enable SMEs and technology companies and support them through the foundation and find a way of coexistence between Korea and the Middle East. So with the technologies that I've mentioned, I hope that we can strengthen cooperation with the Middle East. And once again, as the Director of Global Smart Farm Business at Namsur University, I think that I can also assist you along the way. So I would like to cooperate with all of you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Song-Hee Lee, Managing Director of the new Business Department at Saltware. Hello, everyone. As introduced, I'm the Managing Director at Saltware, Song-Hee Lee. It says here, Smart Farm for UAE, but it can be applied to all other Arab countries. I would like to introduce the Smart Farm business of Saltware. Saltware has three business areas. We have a cloud service catering public cloud and private cloud, and we have a system integration business. And the third is the smart farm business. This is the overview of the company. The company was established in 2003. It is based in Seoul. Last year, the sales revenue was around 35 million, and on Monday, we became a Kosdaq company. Now I would like to introduce the smart farm business. In 2012, we joined a co-research project of Qatar and Gyeonggi-do Agricultural Research Institute. And the theme or the topic of research was to build a smart farm in the desert. And so there was an MOU of the three parties, and afterwards, I understand that there were some internal affairs within Qatar that prevented us from moving the project further along. In 2014, we also provided consultations with Hassan of Saudi Arabia. And we also have experience presenting at the Islamic Development Bank Conference. Also in 2018, the Agricultural Vice Minister of Qatar visited, and he observed a smart farm in Korea. We were there. And as a result of an MOU on smart farms between Qatar and the Korean government, we exported container-type seedling machines to Qatar, and in 2020, we actually established a smart farm and successfully cultivated tomatoes in Qatar. There are three key obstacles to cultivating plants in desert environments. The first is that the growing season is very short. Generally speaking, in Arab countries, the growing season is from November to March, so it's about 5 months. But in terms of growing crop and harvesting it, it is very short. In April to October, the temperature is too high, almost 40 degrees Celsius, so it's very difficult to grow a plant. And many countries, in overcoming this challenge, use air conditioners, but of course, this leads to high energy costs, and this is not very energy efficient either. And given the characteristics of Arab countries, many countries lack agricultural technology. Many of the farmers are foreign migrants, and so the local residents do not have a lot of knowledge or regarding agricultural technology. And in order to overcome these three key challenges, we have three propositions. First is to extend the growing season. We have introduced a seedling machine to extend the growing season. So in September, the hottest season, we plow the seeds and we use the seedling machine and we transfer them in October. And this means that we can extend the growing season by 1 to 2 months. So we use the hot season and the seedling machines during the hot season to extend the growing seasons. The smart farm technology is not just about ICT. It has to do with a lot of agricultural technology. It's a combination of different technologies. So the key is to save energy, to control the environment. And by doing so, we have extended the growing period to about a maximum 9 months. And so this is how we designed our smartphones. So we extended the growing season by 4 months, from 5 months to 9 months. And another key characteristic is that we adopted a low energy consumption technology. So all of the technology embedded in the smart farms, 4 mainly, have been implemented to control the environment. First of all, we use special films that reduce light transmittance. And as mentioned by the professor, we have a roof cooling technology that uses groundwater. And we have applied efficient fan and pad cooling system. And we have designed and implemented very efficient greenhouse ventilation technology. And we also provide cultivation technical support. Our experts who go to the site and they have developed a recipe, a cultivation recipe. And we can also provide remote consultations via video. And from now on, I would like to introduce some of the technologies that we applied in Qatar. So here on this slide, you can see the container type seedling machine. It's about 40 feet long. Here, we can develop different kinds of tomato seedlings. Not only tomatoes, herbs, strawberries, eggplants, and cucumbers can be grown in this container. And if you use our special LED lamps, we can grow the seedlings in 1 month, and usually it takes about 6 months. This is a seedling machine that is established or set up in Qatar. And the name of this product is New Way Seedling Q1, Qatar 1. And here you can see the greenhouse where the seedlings are transplanted. And you can see that it's a series of greenhouses, and you can plant about 4,500 tomato seedlings. And here, as you can see on this slide, we use a variety of technology to cool, to keep the greenhouse cool. And here you see the internal and external environment of the greenhouse. And you can see here the tomato cultivation process. On the left-hand side, on the top left-hand side, these are 4 different types of tomato seedlings that we brought to Qatar from Korea. And then we raised them in the seedling machine, and then the seedlings were transplanted in the greenhouse, and then they bloomed, and we artificially inseminated these tomatoes. There are not that many, as we understand. If it was done naturally by bees, it would have taken much longer. So as you can see, the tomatoes were cultivated and they were harvested and sold in the markets in Qatar. These are some of the smart farm devices that we produce. So in 2020, we carried out this Qatar project, and we realized 5 points. First is that we did not know much about Arab culture and institutions, and we did not understand the export and import limitations. And I know this sounds as a joke. In order to export a fan to Qatar, we had to break down the propellers in the ventilation facilities because it was seen as a strategic weapon. So we had to tear it apart and carry all the pieces out individually. And because of the ammonium explosion in Lebanon, there were import limitations on fertilizers that use ammonium. So some of the fertilizers that we had sent actually were sent back to Korea. So in Qatar, it was very, very difficult to secure the right fertilizer. And so we made immense efforts. And also due to COVID-19 restrictions, our technical experts could not go to Qatar. So we had to get working visa, but this also led to a series of limitations. And we realized that we really did not know much about the market or culture. And a second point is that there is a lack of information when it comes to local agricultural material supply. So it took us a week to buy a very simple tool. And when we went to Qatar, we expected the desert to be just all sand. And we thought the soil was very soft, but just 10 centimeters under the sand, we found rock beds. And so it was very difficult to raise the greenhouses. And it was difficult for us to find reliable local partners. And lastly, as mentioned by the professor, it is very difficult for small and medium-sized companies in Korea to do business overseas. So I think that we need to carry out pilot projects first based on bilateral government cooperation. This is perhaps the most safest and efficient way to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to invite Mr. Byung-Hak Lee, Director of Plantive Farm, for his presentation.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here. Good morning and good afternoon. I'm from Plenty Farm, one of the smart farm company in Korea. Okay, go to the slides. Well, see the left picture on your side, the problem. Everyone knows that. And the future, people say that in sci-fi movie, in our future, there's a very fancy buildings and all the plants grow in the little building. But in our company's view, the future is the thing that we will bring our greens in our blue marble in Earth. So in between the current situation to the future, we bring this system as a solution. The middle picture is our farm in Pyeongtaek, and that's we call Tea Farm. Our company name is Plant Tea Farm, so we call it that Tea Farm. That's a Tea Farm too. I spare a little bit of time for introducing our company. I need to bring another name of the company, Farm 8. Actually, that is our head company, the mother company. And in 2019, we spin off from Farm 8 to become Plenty Farm to concentrate on the smart farming platform provider. So we cover all this value chain from design to the brand. From design and build the smart farm and grow the vegetables by Plenty Farm, and we supply the all vegetables which grown in our tea farm to Farm 8, and they process, means packing, clean, chopping, packing, and distribute to the market, and also the Farm 8 extend the market awareness of smart farm for the future opportunities as a brand. I'll show you our brand at the end. And there's a lot of demands for this smart farming. Some needs the mass production, some needs specific production, kind of for their the restaurant or small farmers, and some needs research and educational purpose, and some needs their own consumption. and our company cover all these desires. So the left end, that is our one of our farm, and second one also our farm. But the difference is that the first picture shown is the built inside a building, so it needs bit of the capex. But second picture is just normal greenhouse. We just put our system, install our system in the budget type facility. And the third one is a container which we supply to the Antarctica. So we're also doing the container farm. And the next one, Metro Farm. If you have a chance, just take the subway line 7 and stop by the Sangdo station. We utilize the unused area and a lot of the unused spaces in the subway, and we just change that unused area to a productive area like our Metro Farm. And next one is the interior farm. That's Shinsegae department store in food section. And last end is the just mini cultivator for the households or little cafe. They utilize the vegetables from that little cultivator. And this sheet shows you what's the benefit of IVF. Actually, it says 60 times more than the field, but in some cases, actually, we get more than that. Our system can stack up to 15 layers, but for security issue, we normally stack up to 8 layers. And we recycle water more than 90%, and we getting improving it. And also, it helps to 10 steps of the carbon dioxide footprint. All right, this is the benefit to the GCC countries. Definitely for helping for food security and job creation and so on. And for future, for people in GCC, we give them the new variety and new experience, and also quality, the very high quality of vegetable with a value, and also it's definitely eco-friendly, which just doesn't have any of the pesticide or insecticide or fungicide. Why Plenty Farm? Bit of PR for our company. 20 years of experience of continuous year-round production with focus on healthy food, and own built-in exclusive partner technologies. It's an world leading engineering company, and organization can promptly mobilize the deliver Plenty Farm aspiration in GCC countries. I don't think I prepared that. Yes, but before I explain this pages, actually we have the 2 projects in GCC, all projects in Kuwait actually, and the another one is under development in Dubai and Al Ain area. So we are not doing that project by ourselves. Actually, in the middle of the picture, we have a joint venture in Dubai, the Pure Harvest, and Korean Plenty Farm. This joint venture has pretty well partnership with the other partners too. And this is our plan in GCC. In large scale farm, we already started since 2021, last year. And we keep going on. And in 2023, we expected to establish one big R&D center in Dubai. We expected the latest, the first quarter of next year. And urban farm, just like our Metro Farm in Sangdo, we expected middle of 2024. And simultaneously, we will bring Farm Academy and Cafe in one of the countries in GCC. This is my last page. Our farm, always in season, wherever, whenever. Thank you very much.
네, 팀장님 감사합니다. 이어서
Thank you very much. Last but not least, we will invite Ms. Mazed Sultan Azavi from the Abu Dhabi Agriculture and Food Safety Authority. We ask for your patience as we connect on Zoom. Again, for our online participants, if you have questions, please leave your questions in the chat room.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for hosting me in this event. Thank you for Embassy of UAE Seoul. Thank you for our Korean partners for making this event. I'll take you through our strategy and what are our initiatives towards the food security. So we are a local government entity in Abu Dhabi. We are Abu Dhabi Agriculture and Food Safety Authority. Our vision is to be a global player in food security by identifying certain gaps and challenges that we work on them. And there are 4 sectoral level challenges and 3 organizational level. We identified 10 programs, and under those programs there are more than 65 initiatives under them. When I say initiatives, we talk about projects, we talk about some activities on the ground related to the farmers, related to entrepreneurship, related to R&D initiatives, related to investments initiatives. And it's all covered in those 10 clusters. Some of the targets that we focus on for the next 3 years, we talk about the GDP, we talk about the market share, we talk about the subsidized programs, and our collaboration with the private sector. So these are some guidelines, numbers, and targets that we put in our focus while we do the 65 initiatives for the next 3 years. These are some of the main targets. So we talk about the Agriculture Sustainability Index, we talk about the Food Security Index, we talk about the private investment in agriculture sector, we talk about the consumer awarenesses, and so on. So we have 2 places. One is the sector level, where we talk about the food security, agriculture sustainability, and the biosecurity. And the other side, or the other area that we look into, the organization level, where we develop the human resources, we have the right calibers, we have the right leadership in food security space. So these are, and this is an overview of what kind of programs that we have. We have 10 programs, as I said, and under those programs, those are the numbers of initiatives. So when we talk about R&D and capability building, we talk about 5 initiatives under them. When we talk about investment and private sector enablement, we talk about 8 initiatives. So these are some of the areas that we prioritize the next 3 years on. So this is an overview of ADAPSA strategy and what are the next 3 years plan. Thank you very much.
Let us now begin the Q&A session. If you do have any questions, please raise your hand and we will pass you the mic. Thank you.
I'll ask a general question so only the presenters can answer. We believe that the technology is helping for, solving or facing the challenges. But, the cost, especially in our region, during the summer, yes, we have challenges and we need the technology to help us to produce it during the summer. But during the summer, the weather in other countries is the nice weather, especially in Europe or other neighbor countries. So they can produce with less cost. So it's difficult for our product during the summer to compete the imported. So this is one of the challenges. I don't know how the technology can help in this regard. The second, we are talking about, the material that used for the greenhouses. We believe that there is some material has been developed to reduce the heat that can allow for light to get in greenhouses, but eliminate the infrared spectrum, so that we can reduce the cost of cooling system. So is there any technology has been developed in Korea, especially for the covering material that can help to reduce the infrared?
예, 저한테 질문한 거 맞죠? 예.
I believe this, I think I would be the person to answer that question. And I went to various models and programs in my presentation. And it really depends on the model that you use. And is it a system for the farmers, or is it for corporates, or is it a national program? So depending on that, what we would use would differ. But basically, there's a lot of infrastructure cost that goes into farming. So the government needs to provide some financial support. In Korea, in order to introduce greenhouses for the farms, we're providing subsidies and financial support. And in other words, we use the government's budget to have farmers achieve an ROI. So I think that it's the same case for the Middle East. The government needs to make sure to offer sufficient support to the farms and the corporations. And then I think we can resolve the profitability issue. And second, if we want to make it into a corporate farm, it involves, of course, as we've seen in the case of Planty Farm, it involves processing, sales, distribution. So you can see that what they do at Planty Farm, they sell, they distribute. So if you look at the smart farm, it's not just about the produce, it's across the entire supply chain to the end consumer where we can reap profits. And as mentioned, you can see that it's not just about processing and distribution, but there's also the bio business that can link with smart farm. And with that, you can actually achieve higher profitability. So I do want to mention that we do need a national system that would support all this. But of course, it's all about human beings and it has to be enjoyable. And you need a fun element to it. For the people that use this, and you need to provide the right adequate environment. So a village program or village business is, I think, key. There's a smart city program in Kuwait as well as in Saudi Arabia. So I think that it's about the smart city and the smart farm and smart food that should be all combined together into a smart city. So You can see here, it could be, if you compare from the local produce and imported produce, if you look at the total costs, you can see that the profitability would not be less considering the smart farm option. So we need some policy support. And with regard to technology, you can see that for the greenhouse, as mentioned, there's a lot of technology that will be going into the greenhouse. In Korea, we even use hydrogen to cultivate produce. We have such technologies that are already developed. But if you do use hydrogen, for instance, you can see that it's actually used for pest control. And there's also a way of utilizing nano water, and then you can see that it can actually penetrate into the cells of the plants, the nutrients, which actually helps better the growth of the plant. So there's special technologies, and depending on the new types of raw materials, as you know, there's a lot of salinated wind, which actually can lead to corrosion. So anti-corrosive POSMAC that's been developed by POSTECH can be quite useful. In terms of cooling and heating, I think that it's important to have the right combination of technologies. You need the right screen, and you need the ventilator and the fog system and the circulation system. All of that is necessary. So when you do run the fan, how are you going to bring all of these technologies together? In that case, you would also need groundwater, underground water. And if you do need underground water, there's desalination issue, and you therefore need desalination technology. So I believe that all of that would be possible, but then of course we have the cost issue. So that's something that has to be resolved. And one way to resolve the cost issues is to raise the efficiency, and ICT there can play a role, and you can also lower personnel costs. But in the Middle East, there's a lot of external workers, and some may say that we do not need to automate the process because there's a lot of workforce. But I think that it's all about automation at the end of the day to lower the cost. And if we do have an automated system, profitability can be a given. Thank you.
In order to cool, you need, of course, a device that goes beyond air conditioning. You need a fan and pad. In Qatar, for instance, in the design of the greenhouse, we designed it so that we can get rid of heat more efficiently. And at what time are you going to use the ventilators, and how? And in the hottest months, you might have to add an additional screen. And in the case of tomato, you need a lot of sunlight. So if you use the screen, then you might have to find ways of getting more sunlight in the greenhouse. So you have to use technology or methods to maximize sunlight in the early dawn or late afternoon. So you need a cultivation technology and ICT technology, a combination of technology, agricultural technology, and ICT in order to lower the cost of production.
I have a question for the Korean panelists. Actually, from a policy perspective, not an engineering perspective. I'm not an engineer, so I'm interested in the policy aspect. What do you think is the main challenge that you face to propagate your model in the Middle East? And what do you think the governments in the Middle East should do? I mean, if you could name one challenge that you face regarding the policy aspect that governments could improve it for you, what would you choose? What's in your minds from a, of course, actual perspective?
Our Qatar export project was part of a project, an R&D project of the Korean Ministry of Commerce and Industry. So we had a lot of government support. But I think in Qatar, they didn't really know a lot about this project, this Korean government project. We now have a deal, but because the contract itself was between two private entities, we were kind of in the dark about the institutional frameworks and many different elements. The expert that was dispatched to Kuwait had to go use a working visa because of the COVID-19 situation. So he had to wait for months to come back to Korea because there were limitations for him to leave the country. So these are some of the issues. If had we known earlier or had we communicated earlier, would have made it easier to carry out this business and to build confidence and trust. But incidents like this undermine confidence. So this leads to questions on whether we want to do an additional project or not on both parties. So I think that the governments can actually help in this matter and help the private companies to do business in a more efficient and easy manner.
Yes, thank you. Next question, please.
Again, one of the challenges for the project in Qatar, yeah, it's between actually two private companies. But I think the intervention from the government can facilitate and solve the issue. Because we got some results, we believe it's very promised, which is need to be completed and solve the issue between two private companies. My question is in regard, since you have also worked in the region and Qatar, what about the humidity? It's one of the big challenges. It's not the heat, the temperature. The humidity can, reduce the efficiency of cooling system if we are using fan and beds. If the water, the environment is saturated, there is no more cooling. If we are going to have a dehumidifier system, that means we are going to add cost for the electricity. Is there any innovation in this regard? We want to hear of.
Like you said, if we use fan and pads, we use water. So the humidity in the greenhouse does go up. To resolve this issue, as I mentioned earlier, we have an effective ventilation system. And we also focused on installing and operating an effective ventilation system. So when we designed the greenhouse, we really took this into consideration. And so we work hard and we designed the greenhouse so that it can have a system to reduce humidity.
Yes, thank you. Any other questions?
First of all, I'd like to thank our panelists today for their great informative presentations. I have a very general question that is actually directed to all of you. My question is, as you might have already known, Ms. Amal today mentioned that the UAE would be hosting COP 2018 in 2023. I'm just wondering what could be the interest and maybe the response of Korean SMEs with regards to sharing know-hows and partnering, finding common grounds and hopefully partnerships with the UAE in the future. Thank you. You could understand my questions.
Yes, of course, there is great interest. And from 2012, we've actually developed smart farm technologies that can adapt to the desert environment. As we were developing smart technologies, we did not look into the domestic market because at that time, back then, the cost was, of course, something that was not acceptable in Korea or justifiable. So we were thinking about the Middle East, the countries with wealth that can actually afford this technology where cultivation may be very difficult. But of course, there are a lot of oil dollars, wealth from the Middle East, but of course, they also do put importance and cost effectiveness. So we thought about a low cost, a Korean type of smart farm technology and how to run that in an effective fashion. So that was the focus that we had back then. So UAE and Kuwait and the Middle East countries were the areas where we would like to engage in testing and demonstration.
I would like to offer my opinion, and I have worked with the government to promote the smart farm business. There are some systematic issues that have hindered this process. So when we introduce Korean technology at conferences or seminars or in business meetings, there are many channels to promote Korean technology. And the government also has policy objectives and also must take into consideration the bilateral relations. So the government officials collaborate regarding policy objectives. And then there are some ODA projects that may be in the pipeline, and this may involve international organizations like the World Bank and KIEP, which is a Latin American fund that can be used. So there is a lack of system in which we can effectively utilize these resources. And if you look at the farming population, they lack the language ability and they lack access to the system, but they have a lot of technology and know-how. So how are we going to connect the farmers and the farming population with the SMEs in this sphere? And how are we going to connect them to academia and further along with government officials? I think this is the crux of the issue. And I think the Korea-Israeli Foundation is very effective at doing this. The Korea Science and Technology Ministry and the Korea-Israeli Foundation have created a fund, and they have been injecting 2 million, and now they have increased that to 8 million. And they provide funding for R&D for the testbed project and for testbed. So we need this sort of systemic institutional framework. And I understand there are a lot of funds in our country, so we need to create a foundation that can utilize these funds to systematically fund the stakeholders. There are many ICT companies, and these ICT companies need a platform. And who can do this? I think that the government can provide a platform for these ICT companies. And I think that then Korean companies will be very much interested.
Thank you very much for the questions and answers. And I would also like to thank all of the participants for being with us until the very end. And with that, we would like to conclude today's forum. Thank you very much.